Hello and welcome. This is the September edition of City Connection here on GRTV. This is a live television program coming to you from the Community Media Center here in downtown Grand Rapids on Bridge Street. I am Phil Tower along with Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. We're with you every month offering the community the opportunity to hear about what's going on at City Hall and beyond. I'm in, by the way, for Starla McDermott, the Executive Director of the Community Media Center, who has this program off. Along with Mayor Bliss on this program, we're pleased to be joined by Grand Rapids Fire Chief Dr. Brad Brown, who will be joining us on this edition of City Connection. That's coming up on the program, so stay tuned for that if you have questions for the chief. And we'll give you time to ask questions of both the mayor and the fire chief to take part of the conversation. It's interactive. That means we want to hear from you. Send your comments to cityconnection@grcmc.org. cityconnection@grcmc.org, or you can find us on Twitter or X or whatever you call it these days at GRTV Access, or by commenting on the GRTV Facebook page. We're checking all those and we thrive on your questions and your feedback. City Connection is a collaboration between the Community Media Center and the great city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We are broadcasting live today. It is 9/11/2023, September 11th, 2023. And we are here on Community Access TV Channel 24, live streaming at the Rapidian.org, as well as GRTV's Facebook page. We'll have a quiz on all of that at the end of the program, so make sure you're ready for that. We will be rebroadcasting this program. If you missed part of it, you wanted to alert a friend on GRTV's Channel 25 throughout the rest of September. And again, as usual, in studio with me is Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. Mayor Bliss, welcome back. Good to have you here. We have a lot to talk about, including, it's not on my agenda, real quickly, talk about the river cleanup that kicked off on Saturday. Let our viewers know about that, if you would, please.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the 20th anniversary of the Mayor's Grand River Cleanup, and we kicked it off on Saturday morning. So I was there with a number of dignitaries, including Mayor Hartwell. So
Awesome.
Some people may not know this, but it was Mayor Hartwell who started the Grand River Cleanup after a fisherman came to his office and complained about how much garbage was in the river. And WEMEAC leads it, so they coordinate all the efforts. A couple years ago, actually, because of COVID, we broke up how the river cleanup is organized. So 5 years ago, it was a one-day event. Thousands of people would come together and we would all split up and take buses everywhere and go clean up the river. What we've done the last several years since COVID is make it a week-long event. So if you still want to get out there and pick up some trash out of the river, you can still do that. WEMEAC coordinates all of it. You can go out in a team and they will give you all the materials that you need. They'll let you know what part of the river still needs to be cleaned up, where to leave the trash that you pick up, and they'll be sending out teams for the rest of the week all the way through this upcoming weekend. So there's still lots of spots that we need volunteers, so people can go to the WEMEAC website and still sign up to get out there this week.
And literally take boats out on the river and pull stuff out of the river.
Yeah, it's twofold. So some of it is walking along the river's edge, and then some boats go out, but then also over the last several years we've focused on the tributaries leading into the Grand River as well. So we've been at the creek beds going into the river. A couple years ago I did Plaster Creek, so we're kind of out and about along all those tributaries, but then also it's multi-jurisdictional. So we were joined with several other dignitaries from other cities, so Walker and Wyoming, anyone that touches the Grand River, they have been active participants.
Terrific. I also want to remind our viewers that lead is in the news. The City of Grand Rapids and Kent County recently received a grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, $6.6 million. This grant will help the city deal with lead abatement, which is still an issue and fortunately is still something that is on the radar for the city. Cleaning up some homes that may still have lead coming into them, could be through the pipes, could be through fixtures, any number of things. Talk about that. This is really important because some homes have been targeted, right?
Yes. So there's a couple efforts going on with lead. In our city, the vast majority of children being poisoned by lead, they are still being poisoned by lead in paint. So a significant amount of these funds are going towards lead remediation, so to increase the number of homes we'll be able to work with to remediate lead paint. Very often in older homes built before 1978 that have lead paint, there's lead around the windows, and when windows get opened and shut, they create dust particles that can get on children's fingers. They put it in their mouth, and they can ingest lead. So that tends to still be the primary issue. So part of the funds will go towards education. So they'll be used to educate families, especially families that have children under the age of 6. Those children are at the highest risk because they're so oral still, and they put their little fingers in their mouth a lot. So this work in partnership with the health department, it's a little confusing sometimes because there's so many jurisdictions involved. The health department still helps families with all of the lead testing. So they're the ones that will work with families to have their children tested. If it comes back positive, they'll work on treatment to respond to that child and that family. They'll help with remediation in the home as well. And then we will also work with remediation. Then we're also working in tandem to remove and replace lead lines, water lines. So the city's been working on this for a number of years. We're doing that again in partnership with our partners at the county and the state government. And for that program, we are working with the health department to offer families who still have lead lines free water filters. So they can put a water filter on their faucet to just give them an additional level of support and protection. With that being said, we test a lot of water, and our water quality is good, and we don't have high levels of lead, but we are still in the process of replacing all of the lead lines, and we received state and federal funds for that work as well.
All right, and most importantly, how can folks learn more in terms of if they have young children in the house, whether it's paint or water, taking advantage of some of these programs?
Yeah, so all you have to do is call 311. And if you don't even know if you have lead lines coming into your home, we can tell you. So we have all of that mapped out. We know where the lead lines are. We do have a part of the program, and the funding pays for the line to replace all the way from the road into the home. But then some families may still have fixtures in the home internally that should be replaced as well. Right. So we can work with them on that. For the lead remediation, a lot of that work is funneled through our community development department. Again, you can call 311, or our community partner in this space is Healthy Homes. So we work with them. Actually, they will be a fiduciary of some of these funds to help with education, and they can help families and provide information. They can talk about how do you get testing. And then I would say a third component of this, and it's a decision that the City Commission just made a couple months ago. If you are in a rental property, by the end of this year, we will start to require lead testing for rental property homes as part of their inspection process. So we'll be requiring a lead dust test, 8 of them to be taken in 4 separate rooms, and that too should be able to flag any homes where there is a lead hazard.
All right, good proactive steps to take.
Yeah.
Also coming up, the next Commission Night Out is a week from tomorrow, September 19th. Talk about the Commission Night Out. Yeah,
so these are Commission Night Out. We started these back up after COVID, after it was safe to get back all together. We do them every couple months in a different part of the city. The one coming up, as you said, on September 19th is going to be here on the west side. So we rotate them between the 3 wards. So the one in September is on the west side. It's at the Goy Center. Doors will open up at 5:30. We provide light refreshments, something to drink. So we encourage families to come and eat with us and connect. And then there's information booths and tables set up. So I typically will start the meeting. We'll do a brief presentation. We'll take a break for community conversations. Then we'll come back together for the business portion of the meeting. The agenda on Tuesday is going to be a long agenda. We have a number of scheduled public hearings that we have, but we'll start the meeting and we'll do some, good 90 minutes of community conversations before we get to the business meeting.
All right, fair enough. This is a great opportunity for our viewers to take advantage of meeting the City Commission, maybe in your neck of the city, in your part of the neighborhood. And again, that's Tuesday the 19th at the Goy Center on the southwest side of Grand Rapids. It is time again for Art Prize. Art Prize 2.0. I just had a chance to sit down with Catlin Whittington, the new executive director of Art Prize. So I got schooled up on what is really going to be a tremendous return of Art Prize. Yeah. That's September 14th through October 1st. What can you tell our viewers about that?
Yeah, I will encourage them to come downtown. You're absolutely right. We kick it off this week. We're super excited. Art Prize has taken over the clubhouse, as we're calling it, over at the old UICA building.
Yep.
So there'll be a physical space that people can go. If they've never come to Art Prize, you can go there. You can get a map, you can get information, you can buy swag. There'll be an artist lounge there. There will be some pieces there. We're going to be having events there. So it'll be a wonderful little hub that people will be able to go to. But we are bringing back, I would say, some of the core elements that people loved about Art Prize when it started. So there will be hundreds of pieces of art all throughout downtown and the near spaces. It's an area that is walkable. We're bringing back the public vote, so we'll be giving out some large prizes. Similarly to years past, we'll be able to track who those top vote getters are, and then we'll vote on the top 25. In addition, we'll have a number of juried awards that we'll be giving out at the end celebration. And then there are a whole host of community events over the 18 days.
Indeed.
My schedule is crazy, as I'm sure many people, they're looking at their schedule. It's going to be a fun 18 months. We have Tech Week coming out next week, so we have a whole host of events looking at tech and how we become an innovative and tech-friendly hub here in the city. We have Confluence Music, the festival coming back. We have other festivals teed up, so there will be a ton of fun things happening over the 18 days of Art Prize, and I hope people come downtown. We're hopeful to attract, again, tens of thousands of visitors who may, for the first time, be getting to know our city.
And encourage our viewers, don't be afraid of downtown. There are great opportunities for you to take advantage of the Rapid and get around town. You'll have the Art Prize ambassadors who will be out. It's just a welcoming and wonderful time to be in our great city. Yeah. Mayor Bliss, I also wanted to real quickly mention before we go to our first break here, the city's Economic Development Director, Jeremy Gracia, is stepping down. He's moving on to a new opportunity. Jono Klooster will be taking over in the assistant position. He will be the interim Economic Development Director for the city of Grand Rapids. Real quickly, because we're coming up on a break, talk about the Economic Development Department. That's an important role within the city's operations.
Yeah, it's a really important role. They do a lot of different work. I would say they are the front door to all things related to economic development, from supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs to helping to make the case for companies to come to Grand Rapids. They oversee our Economic Development Corporation, our Brownfield Authority. So anytime the city is voting on any type of tax increment or financial incentive for a company, that goes through that department, but also our Brownfield Authority. And they really are the lead in that space. And then they're the ones that partner typically with the Right Place and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Mm-hmm. Again, we typically have a multi-jurisdictional, multi-pronged approach, and they're the point person for that. So Jeremiah's been here for a number of years. We're really grateful for the work that he's done. He's actually going back to the city where he was before he came to Grand Rapids, and kind of, as he calls it, going back home. Jono Klooster's been with the city for a long time, has acted as an interim director in the past after Kara Wood moved on. She was our former economic development director. He'll do a great job, and then we'll move forward with doing a national search.
Terrific. Good to know, and good luck to Jeremiah. We're going to take a real quick break here. Stay tuned. We'll be back as Mayor Bliss talks with Grand Rapids Fire Chief Brad Brown. You're watching City Connection here on GRTV.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push their creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Hello and welcome back. I'm so delighted to have with me our new fire chief, Chief Brown. New to the role, but not new to the city of Grand Rapids. I've known Chief Brown for, my goodness.
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's good to have you in this role. I'd like to just take a little time to be, as we get started before we go to the Q&A section. For folks who don't know much about you, why don't you first start and just share a little bit about yourself and your journey, what led you to want to be a firefighter, and then a little bit about your time here with Grand Rapids Fire Department.
Sure, absolutely. So the first thing you'll notice is I talk a little funny. I'm from North Carolina originally, moved up here in 2003. So I entered the fire service at the age of 16.
Wow.
At the age of 16. In high school, I wasn't really that into academics, which is interesting because I'm a doctor now. Things go full circle. I had to find something that I was very interested in, and my neighbor was a volunteer firefighter. I lived on the far northwest side of the city, and so you couldn't volunteer, much like Grand Rapids, you can't volunteer in the city, but I was close enough to that outlying agency that they let me join. And as soon as I signed up, the camaraderie, the excitement, the sense of purpose, I was absolutely hooked. And so at the age of 19, I was hired by the Greensboro Fire Department, about twice the size of Grand Rapids. And they were an internationally accredited ISO Class 1 department. So that was my barometer. My barometer was one of the top 100 in the country. Met my wife down in Greensboro. She went to Michigan State, and she wanted to move back home. We have a farm down in Fenville, Michigan, horses and hay, and her parents still take care of that. And I said, well, if we're going to move up north, I have to work for a bigger city. I said, I like the call volume, I like being busy, and Grand Rapids hadn't hired in several years. I think it was like 3 years at the time. And right when we were going to move up, Grand Rapids posted. And I flew up here, walked into, DeVos Place was still under construction, but walked into a very large room with over 1,000 people to take the exam and thought, there's no way in heck I'm going to get hired. And sure enough, I did. And so in 2003, I started out as a recruit firefighter. And over the years, just really had education going on the side. I like to say I was a professional student. I went to school, college for about 20 years. It was something that I always did as I was working at the fire department. And in the evenings when some people were decompressing or working out, I was in front of the computer doing schoolwork. And so my career just kept moving, and I kept getting more schooling, and next thing you know, I'm sitting here in the fire chief seat. So
Yeah. Well, it was meant to be
I guess.
that Grand Rapids would become your home.
Yeah.
So in addition to getting your doctorate degree, remind me what that's in?
Organizational leadership
That's
and
right.
development.
That's right.
Yeah.
During your 20 years with the department, you also moved up and you held a number of different roles,
Yes.
from strategic planning to data analysis to really elevate. I think you led also the accreditation process,
did.
didn't you?
Yes.
So talk a little bit about some of the things that you
Sure.
did. Yeah, I know you helped with the prevention efforts that we started. So elaborate a little bit more on some of the things you did
Yeah.
with the department before you threw your name in as fire chief.
Sure. So I think that's one thing people don't realize is all the different facets within a fire department. And especially as big as Grand Rapids is, and that's what we hear from a lot of candidates that want to come here, is there's so many different fingers and opportunities and different specialties that you just don't get at a smaller department. So obviously I rode the big red truck, I went to a lot of fires, moved to a lot of different stations throughout the city. Was an acting driver, so I drove the trucks, acting officer, rode the front seat, took command of some fires. And then very early on, you're going to remember this, we hit a rough patch with the budget.
Yeah.
So around 08, 09, the bottom really fell out, and the fire department ended up laying off several firefighters. And it was very tough times for the entire city, for the entire city. And what we needed was data to make good decisions, because as a chief, you develop a pretty good gut feel over the years. But gut feel wasn't going to cut it in this case. We had some serious decisions to make. And I had just finished up my undergrad in business, and I'm like, well, I'll come up and do some analysis. Little did I know I would never leave. Had I known that, maybe I wouldn't
Chief
have.
was like, I need you to stick around.
Yeah, exactly. So went into strategic planning, spent 4 or 5 years doing that and the data analysis. Really looked at every part of the department and retooled fire prevention, instituted our residential safety program, which is in like version 4.0 now. I'm very happy to report that program is going strong and still one of the best in the country, in my opinion.
And I should say,
Oh, yes.
because I too am really proud of that work and glad as an elected official we were able to support it.
Yeah.
We've put in over 70,000, is
Yes,
that the latest number I saw?
70,000.
70,000 smoke detectors
Yep.
in homes throughout our community.
Yes.
And we know that some of them have saved lives.
Absolutely it has. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've run the data,
Yeah.
and there is a very significant statistical analysis that shows if we've been to your house and do the home safety assessment and put up alarms, the outcomes are fantastic.
Yeah, and we also do carbon monoxide
We do.
detectors as well, just
We
as
do.
an FYI.
And all they have to do is call
Yeah.
311.
Yeah,
And we'll get you scheduled and we'll show up. So
That's awesome.
after planning, moved into the Assistant Chief of Administration. Spent about 4 years there where I handled the budget, obviously strategic planning still, and all of our fleet and facilities. And I'm sure we'll get into some discussions about that. That was one of the most exciting yet challenging roles is our aging infrastructure. And it's a struggle to keep up. A lot of communities around us have pretty new facilities. We operate in 2 fire stations over 100 years old, and one is just a few years away from turning 100. So that brings with it some inherent challenges. And then very quickly after that, moved into the deputy chief role, where I was in charge of all the people things. So human resources, hiring, recruitment, discipline, unfortunately, every now and then, but usually just managing the ebb and flow of people moving around from station to station and so much goes on behind the scene that you just don't realize, even as a firefighter working here. And then Chief Lehman announced his retirement. He'll tell you it was perfect timing. I'll tell you it was a year too early. But as I looked around the community, I felt a sense of duty for me to step up. Having been in all those different administrative roles, I knew that it would take someone else a decent amount of time to get up to speed. We have a lot of very big projects in process right now, and I felt that for continuity, it was best for our department if I put my name in the hat, and I did.
Yeah.
So.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, thank you.
For those who didn't follow the process, it was a national search. So we hired a consultant to do that
Correct.
search. We had a number of candidates, and the best candidate was selected, and you were named and sworn in. How many months ago was that?
It's 4 months, but
Okay.
it feels like a year. So
I was trying to remember.
yeah.
And you've really hit the ground running. Really, I mean that
Absolutely.
was right when we were working on the budget, so you had to jump into that.
Yes.
Chief Lehman also retired, and with him he took his sweet little dog Axel.
He did.
So you have replaced Axel with your own little honey. Do you
Yeah,
want to talk
yeah.
about Smokey?
Yeah, so Smokey is 7 months old. And as we were talking before, I didn't bring him today because we've had event after event since it's 9/11.
Yeah.
And it would have been a long day for him. But he's a gray and black spotted Labradoodle. A lot of people go, is he a Dalmatian? I say, no, he's a Labradoodle. Just very sweet. And it's important for us, and we wanted to carry on that tradition, is really an emotional support dog.
Yeah.
One, it breaks down barriers in the community. Obviously, I try to be approachable, but when you have a nice dog, people always want to come up and talk and pet the dog. And so that's a way for us to reach out to the community. But when he runs into the station and is able to interact with our crews, it just gives them a brief moment to focus in on something nice and not think about the call they just went on.
Yeah, it's really sweet. We only have a couple minutes left, so I
Okay.
think we'll hold off for the next section to talk about the $35 million
Yes.
allocation from the state, because I'd like you to elaborate on that a little
Yeah,
bit more,
absolutely.
but also to thank our legislators. And as we close up this section, I think it's appropriate for us to just really highlight the fact that today is a sad day in our country.
It is.
A day that, a lot of our first responders lost their lives. Our department is one of many that pauses as a day of remembrance, but also goes above and beyond to make sure that we're elevating those who put their lives on the line every day to run into a building when other people are trying to run out. So do you want to just make any comments just in memory of 9/11 as
Sure.
we all come together on this sad day? I know there's a remembering service that the Boy Scouts do every year also occurring. So
That's been going the whole day, and I was over at Cornerstone University this morning, and it really was enlightening to see how many people in that chapel were not even around when 9/11 happened. But it was certainly a tragic day for our country, for first responders. Obviously, 343 firefighters lost their lives that day, almost 3,000 in total. That day, and now we're seeing the long-term impacts of all the respiratory issues, cancer, PTSD, et cetera. That was really a wake-up call, I think, for not only the country, but definitely first responders of what we signed up for. And I will tell you, this morning at 8:46, when the first plane hit the tower, we made an announcement over dispatch, and every Grand Rapids firefighter, not on an active call, paused and took a moment of silence to honor the men and women that laid down their lives that day. And we never want to forget.
Yeah, we never will forget. So thank you for that. Thank you for your service. I'm glad that you are leading our department. And we'll take a break now, and we'll come back together and spend another 15 minutes or so asking our new chief additional questions.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is a world of music. We aim to shine a light on underserved musical artists in a non-commercial format with no advertisements. Volunteers come in to create personalized music programming that broadcasts over the air at 88.1 FM to West Michigan and via the internet to listeners all over the world. These listeners sponsor our efforts, keeping WYCE independent and community-owned. Musicians use the station to broaden their audience and build support for their latest projects by submitting their music to be included in our broadcast and performing live in studio. Businesses find their customers through underwriting, nonprofits inform the community to their mission, and listeners stay informed about local events. We believe that music is a powerful force that creates quality relationships in our community, that speaks to our emotions, and provides the soundtrack to our lives.
To City Connection here on GRTV. This is Phil Tower in for Starla McDermott on this edition of City Connection, of course with Mayor Rosalynn Bliss with the City of Grand Rapids, and very pleased to have with us in studio in this program Dr. Brad Brown, Fire Chief with, of course, the Grand Rapids Fire Department. Brad, thanks for joining us. You've had the easy part. Now we face our viewers' questions, and now that we always have great questions from our viewers, so we're going to start with this question. This is a question about your role in the job. You've been fire chief for just a few months. You've also been with the fire department, as we heard, for a long time. This viewer has a question about your observations from your role as chief, and what you, since you've been in the job, in this position, what you may have identified as some priorities, things you want to work on, whether they're current, future, or long term.
Sure, absolutely. And as we talked in the last segment, there's a certain advantage from being internal in some ways, but in other ways, fresh eyes is good as well. And I've had the great fortune of traveling around the country as a peer assessor for the Center for Public Safety Excellence. And that allows me to go into other fire departments and really take a look at best practices. And so I've been able, as fire chief, it's something I continue to do, but I've been able to take a pretty objective look at Grand Rapids Fire. And we are one of 113 departments in the whole world that are ISO Class 1, Insurance Services Office Class 1, and internationally accredited. We're in some pretty good company around here. And so what I can tell you is we're doing as good as we can with the resources we have. Our people are absolutely fantastic. They're the best part of this job. And that was really something the previous chief had started, is turning that culture around and really having our people love coming to work. And that's where we're at right now. Now, my job is to work on the infrastructure side of things to keep our fleet updated. You'd mentioned how many times you hear the trucks going up and down Bridge Street. Fire trucks are expensive. Fire stations are expensive. Firefighters are expensive. And so how do we balance the needs of the fire department with the rest of the city? And that's really what I'm working on at first, is getting our staffing situated and get our stations that average 70 years old squared away.
I didn't realize that, 70
Yes.
years old.
On average.
Right.
So yeah, so we have 2 over 100 years old and 1 that'll turn 100 here in just a couple of years.
You know, we all have been shocked at the price of used cars, new cars. I can't imagine, Dr. Brad Brown, what a fire engine costs these days. I know they come in all shapes and sizes.
They do.
What,
Do you wanna
what's,
share?
what's the budget?
Absolutely.
What's the budget model?
Absolutely. So I will tell you, post-COVID, it has gotten a little ridiculous. So for
Everything
me,
has.
Yes. So for me to go buy a fire engine today is about $850,000.
My goodness.
That's a ladder truck, right?
Nope, that's an
That's
engine.
engine.
That's an engine, which is our workhorse. Just 5-6 years ago, those were $500,000. Now, I will tell you, Grand Rapids does not specify very fancy engines. You can spend over $1 million now on an engine, and the lead time, 3 years.
3 years
You
to
can have
from
it in
ordering
3 short
Okay.
years. Yeah.
So you've got to keep the machines you have, the fire trucks you have, in top running condition.
Absolutely.
That's another whole layer of
Yes.
management that you
Yeah.
have to look at, but it's an important piece there. And talk about it from the firefighter's perspective, because we have a viewer has a question about one of his children who would like to be a firefighter. We know there is a labor and a talent shortage impacting so many sectors of our business world today. What are the challenges you're seeing as fire chief? I know you talked with Mayor Bliss about the economic downturn, having to lay people off, but it seems like everybody's hiring these days. How hard is it to find hardworking, team-playing firefighters for the future?
It's much harder than it used to be. So,
Okay.
so as I mentioned, when we used to post for a job, we'd have thousands of applicants. We still receive more applications in the fire department than any other department in the city, but we're down to, this last time we had 250 applicants for the academy instead of thousands. And so for us, we're still doing okay. On the east side of the state, they may have 5 openings and 4 applicants. And so when I interact with other fire chiefs, they are quite in awe of Grand Rapids and how we're still able to attract a decent amount of talent here.
Okay, so Wayne has a 12-year-old son
Yes.
who's interested in being a firefighter. That's not a surprise.
Yeah.
A lot of young men, a lot of boys and girls want to be firefighters. Let's talk about what parents can do to encourage that career path, especially with a junior high school student.
Summer Youth Academy. So if you go
I knew you were going to have an answer
I was
for
gonna
me.
Absolutely.
say.
So if you go to joingrfire.com, joingrfire.com, it'll outline all of our programs. And so that is the perfect age. They're right on the edge of being able to participate in a week-long youth academy that really gives them, and there are some news stories on that this past year, it really gives them an idea of what it would be like to be a firefighter. And then we also have programs in the schools with JROTC and do that. And now we have a cadet program which fills that gap for the young adults from the time they graduate high school until they would get hired by Grand Rapids. And I'm happy to announce that we've had 2 of our cadets make it all the way through the process, and they've received job offers from Grand Rapids Fire.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned the academy. How does that work real quickly?
So we are still one of, and I think this goes to us receiving so many applications. We are one of the few in the state that will hire you off the street with 0 experience. 0 experience. What we want is someone that's at least 18 years old, driver's license, no felony, and a strong work ethic. And we're willing to take that person and mold them into a firefighter. Usually it's about 50% of our recruits coming in have fire experience and 50% don't. We have some fantastic firefighters that have never pulled a hose before, never done CPR before, and 16 weeks later, they are amazing firefighters. And so hats off to not only the city for keeping the barriers low, but our training division for being able to turn those men and women into Grand Rapids firefighters.
That's impressive, indeed. We have another question. Chris asks, Chief, do you anticipate dealing with more fires in the city, more calls? We've got a lot of unpredictable weather with climate change, and we certainly had a pretty big storm here just a few weeks ago with the tornado. Talk about that in terms of how you've seen unpredictable weather impact your department.
Yeah, so severe weather for us, fire has been on the downward trend. In a city of our size, you're never going to eliminate the fire problem. We still go to about a fire a day. For us, we've seen an uptick in severe weather responses. Now, I don't know if our viewers know this, but we have an emergency management program in-house in the city. It's housed under the fire department. And our emergency manager has been invaluable to establish all these plans that when a tornado or shear winds or the downbursts come through, we're able to grab this book off the shelf. And that's something we never had before. And it's a playbook on how to deal with all these things. But when you look at the blizzard from this past winter, when you look at the floods, when you look at the tornadoes, we're definitely seeing an uptick in severe weather. And that really places a lot of strain on first responders. So 2 weeks ago, all of my command staff responded in. I was up in dispatch. We had about 150 calls pending. What that means is when you call 911, there's 150 people in front of you.
My goodness.
Now, we prioritize the 8 structure fires, the cardiac arrest, and the technical rescue. So we were still sending units to the most serious calls. But if you simply had a wire down in your front yard, we urge you to stay away, and we'll be there when we can. And it took us 3-4 hours to get through that backlog. That's starting to become more common.
Right, and that, as you said, can cause delays because you just simply don't have enough infrastructure to get people out, firefighters and vehicles to get people out. Tina's question was about that during the tornado. It was a unique situation where it touched down in several areas. I know I live in Plainfield Township, and the impact was strong there, especially up by Scott Lake Golf Club. Interesting to see that happen, but we've dealt with floods in the past, all kinds of interesting weather phenomena. We have another question from Ted. During discussions about police drones, he had said he had heard a couple of times that the fire department has used drones. Is that true? And then talk about the role of drones, if you would, Brad, in firefighting.
So it is true. We were actually the first city department to acquire the unmanned aerial systems.
A couple of years ago. How many years
I think it was 2018. So we're looking at
several years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of the initial groundwork of setting up a policy, meeting with ACLU, looking at privacy, looking at all these different things. I don't think we fully utilize the drones as much as the police are potentially going to utilize them. The way we utilize them is for severe weather, for search and rescue, and then if we have a large commercial fire. We hardly would ever put it up for a residential fire, but when we get these large structures that are hundreds of feet long, we can send that up with a thermal imaging camera, and it helps us position our equipment. So a few times a month, you might see a GRFD drone flying.
Yeah, that's a great point on a large structure where you can't pinpoint that, but with technology, right away. We are taking your questions here on City Connection. We're going to continue with another question here after a brief break. You're watching City Connection here on GRTV with Dr. Brad Brown, Chief of the Grand Rapids Fire Department, of course, Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. Back in a moment.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers and her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply, meals are shared, a stronger local food economy is built.
And welcome back to City Connection here on GVR TV. I am Phil Tower in for Starla McDermott. This month on City Connection, we're with Mayor Rosalynn Bliss. Mayor Bliss, you had a couple of things you wanted to follow up with Chief Brad Brown. I think we were talking about locations, but there was something else you wanted to make sure our viewers knew about.
Yes, thank you. We didn't get to it during the questions, but it's really important, I think, for the community to also know that we will be embarking on some infrastructure upgrades to 2 new fire stations, both on the southeast side. And then we also recently purchased land here on the west side for a new training facility for our fire department. And we were really fortunate during the budget process, the state budget process, to have $35 million allocated to help us with those projects.
Oh, that's
so
fantastic.
We'll start moving really quickly on a brand new fire station on Kalamazoo. The reason that we need it there is that we're not meeting our goals when it comes to response time. And then we are replacing the fire station on Division. It'll be on the opposite side of the street, about a block down from the current station. But that current station, if you've been in there, it's over 100 years old, and just for the volume of calls that station responds to, we really need a new station. So we'll have 2 new fire stations, and then we'll be working to build the training facility. Right now, the fire department training facility is kind of spread in multiple locations. So we have one location over at our Domtar site, our site off of Butterworth. We have an outside training facility. We have inside one at Coldbrook. We have some training that happens at LaGrave. So we'll consolidate all of that and have a really nice fire safety training facility. And that's about, as I said, about a 9.5 acre site.
That will be impressive indeed. We have another question for Mayor Bliss here on City Connection. This one from Hilda. Hilda said, I heard you declare it Welcoming Week. What does that mean, Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. So we did this last week on Tuesday, and it's a proclamation declaring Welcoming Week. It's a full week, really elevating all of our efforts around working in partnership with our partners at the county and organizations to be a welcoming and inclusive community where people feel like they belong. So we really elevated and affirmed our commitment to that work. We have been engaged in that work for a number of years, actually in partnership with Samaritas, as we work through the Gateways for Growth process, solidified the welcoming plan that the county is leading. We're a part of that work. And then through that plan, there's a number of objectives and goals, and we're working to move forward and meet those goals. And then to work with partners to really elevate the need for all of us to work together to continue to be an inclusive community.
Great. Let's take another question, and this one on bees, about the city's beekeeping ordinance. This viewer is wondering, does that account for people who are allergic for bee stings? Understanding they are an important part of the ecosystem, but this viewer is worried for kids and family members who have allergic reactions. I guess you can get bee stings any place, but
Yeah.
what should people know about the bee ordinance in the city?
That's great. Thank you for asking that question. We're in the process right now of updating our animal ordinance and our nuisance ordinance. So currently, under our city code, people can have, they can keep bees in their backyards if their backyards are a certain size, and the bees are kept so far away from the fence line, and they have like a vent to make sure that they stay in a certain space. So what we did, we have an urban agriculture committee, and they review all of our policies and ordinances, and they made recommendations for some changes. So it's not, so they've been allowed for years. I can't even remember how long, the entire time I've been a commissioner, so at least 20 years. So we just solidified and clarified some of the language around if you want to keep bees, honeybees, so it's only for honeybees, that they tend to be a little bit more docile. So it's only for honeybees, and then as I said, there's some real clear parameters on how you do that. We also made some changes to our backyard chicken language, so that's in the amended animal ordinance that we're reviewing, and then we took out some language related to dogs so that the county can enforce the rules around aggressive or dangerous dogs. So there's a few different changes in the upcoming ordinance amendment.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Let's move on to a question from Grant. Grant is asking, Mayor Bliss, is any of the trash from the river cleanup recyclable, and is it separated from the trash at all? I would assume you pull quite a few water bottles out of the river, plastic water bottles. In fact, I was just on the river 2 weeks ago with a friend and noticed, like a lid top. Plastic is just an insidious thing in any place, especially in our waterways. What do you know about recycling? I know WMIAC, you had mentioned before, was involved with this process.
Yes, so the answer is wholeheartedly yes. So if you volunteer and you go out to clean up the river, you get 2 different bags. One of them is for recyclables. There's a list of things in addition to plastic, so you can recycle certain glasses and other products. And so you have a bag for recyclables, and then you have a bag for trash. And so you do both, and then we take the orange bag, the recycle bag, and we take that directly to the Kent County recycling facility, and then the trash will go to the incinerator. So all of the trash, not the recyclables, in our city goes to the waste to energy site, and then it's burned, and it's turned into energy that is then used by vicinity that is producing the steam that powers a lot of the buildings downtown.
Which is a great use of that recyclable material. Art Prize is up next with a question. This is Hannah. Hannah says, Art Prize 1.0, which is the previous version of Art Prize, in her estimation, had some issues with some venues and specifically with how Art Prize had interacted with artists and venues. She is wondering, Hannah is wondering, Mayor, how has Art Prize 2.0 changed how it will work with entities? I don't know if you know that specifically. Obviously, I know from having had the opportunity of speaking with the executive director, Catlin Whittington, he has spent a lot of time talking with community members, community stakeholders, community leaders, and just everyday fans of Art Prize to make sure they were listening. But what can you say about Art Prize in terms of what people can expect and the venues and the artists? What do you know about that?
Yeah, so I serve on the steering committee, so I know quite a bit, although my focus has largely been around fundraising and helping with marketing.
Yes.
But I can tell you that a lot of, as you said, a lot of time has been spent listening to the voices of not just individuals that support through the venue, volunteers, artists. We want this to be an incredible opportunity and experience for artists. And so I think what you'll find this year is a real commitment to that. Even at the Artist Lounge, which is going to be at the clubhouse, there is going to be ample time and space to support artists and for people to come and meet artists. We're working with All Artworks again. Some artists are deciding to make their art available for purchase, so that will be an option for artists, a way to support them. And so we're going to do everything we can to make sure that artists feel appreciated and feel like this is a valuable use of their time. And so I would say I have confidence in the new Catlin, the new president and CEO, and the team that he's put together. But I also am hopeful that people recognize that it's a new structure and governance with a new team, largely a new team. I'm not going to promise anyone that we won't have some hiccups. If you have concerns or if something comes up, please let us know. We are eager to hear feedback and to have not only this year a success, but then really to start immediately focusing on next year and building up the event for next year, which, by the way, next year is going to be the 15th anniversary of our prize.
That's true.
So we have a lot of really cool ideas that we're throwing about, talking about, I should say, as we look to celebrating the 15th year anniversary.
All right, thanks for your question.
Yeah.
Another question, Mayor, this viewer says, I walk to work every morning and come across instances of people parking in areas that block sidewalks and crosswalks. I can usually just walk around them, but neighbors who use mobility devices have difficulty with that. What can we do to make sure these areas remain accessible for pedestrians? Should they call the police? What should they do? That was a question from Morgan.
Yeah, so I would say you can call our non-emergency line or 311. So a couple of things, and we've heard this from others as well about how it's unsafe when people can't walk. Obviously we want our sidewalks to be accessible for everyone, especially individuals who need additional support, even, moms with a big stroller, and there's lots of people that need to have safe, accessible sidewalks. And so I would say call 311. Part of the budget that we just approved in June, we added additional staffing in our Public Works Department, and then also if you're in the downtown area, we have done a lot of work with our ambassadors, and they will go around to try to make sure that areas are cleared so that people can get through, whether it's a sidewalk or a doorway. Please just let us know. We can't respond if we don't know about it. So I would say best bet, non-emergency line, 311. If you're in the downtown area, you can call DGRI.
All right, take advantage of that, and thank you very much for that. Yeah. We are just about out of time for this week's program. Don't forget about next night out, next Tuesday, the 19th at the Goy Center. Great chance to meet with your city commissioners here in Grand Rapids. Want to thank Mayor Rosalynn Bliss, as well as Grand Rapids Fire Chief Dr. Brad Brown, for joining us on this edition of City Connection. And thank you for being our viewers. Don't forget to share your questions with us and join us next time. Our next month's episode takes place October 2nd. And until then, thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your month. We'll catch you next time here on City Connection on GRTV.